What is your message to these people embarking on this trip and to the people on the ground coordinating this mammoth task?
Their actions are courageous and honorable. It's in the highest tradition of nonviolent civil disobedience, facing dangers and difficulties to achieve an end that's extremely honorable. So they should be proud of themselves and should gain extensive support.
The Free Gaza movement here in Ireland have teamed up with Ireland's largest cement producer, who will supply hundreds of tons of cement for rebuilding work in Gaza. Considering that cement has been banned from entering Gaza in over 3 years, how vital is that cement right now in Gaza?
It's not only valuable because they have to build, like any community does, but they also have to rebuild what was devastated. The years of the siege, even before the siege, it was a prison, and you couldn't do much. And now, after the last January's attack, there's a tremendous amount of rebuilding that's necessary. That's why Israel's been withholding cement. It does not want rebuilding to take place. So we can't put a monetary value on the cement. It would be enormous, but the symbolic value is even greater. It's breaking the siege. It's telling the world, Israel and the world, that we will not tolerate these savage actions.
Your last visit here to Northern Ireland was 16 years ago in 1993. I was 23 at that time, having been born a month before our troubles started. I can honestly say that in 1993, no one, including myself, could ever have imagined the peace that we now have here. My hope for the people in Palestine and Israel is that someday soon they can experience and embrace the same peace that we now share with each other. In 2025, 16 years from now, when you and me will be a bit older and wiser, would you share my hope that there will be peace between both sides by then?
Well, I won't see it, but you will. It depends on a choice that's made. I didn't have any hope for it either in 1993. It was a war zone. It didn't look like anything was going to change. There was a significant change. And in this respect, I should say that President Clinton and George Mitchell played a positive role. I think the major thing that happened is that Britain came to recognize that if they respond to terror with more violence, the cycle will escalate. If they respond to terror by recognizing that it doesn't come from nowhere, it comes from real grievances, and those grievances are often quite legitimate, and that they should address the grievances, then the terror can decline, negotiations can continue, IRA hitmen will be on the negotiations team, and you can move forward towards progress. It's not utopia, and I don't have to tell you, but it's a lot better than it was. Now, George Mitchell was the negotiator at that time, and he pretty much succeeded because he had the U.S. government behind him. George Mitchell is again the negotiator in Israel-Palestine, and as things now stand, he will not succeed because it does not have the U.S. government behind him. The U.S. government is continuing to support the occupation, a few mild reprimands here and there, pretty much the same as before, but unwilling to face the legitimate, significant grievances, demands, and goals of the subjugated Palestinian people. Well, it can change. I mean, the lesson of Northern Ireland is that there are peaceful means to overcome bitter, brutal, harsh conflicts, and in fact those are the only means. And it should be even easier in Israel-Palestine. I mean, Clinton and Obama now are saying, well, we have to have negotiations. Well, negotiations are better than killing, but they're meaningless until we know what they're about. What are the negotiations about? Well, here there's a very sharp division between the world on the one hand and the United States and Israel on the other. For 30 years, the United States has been blocking a diplomatic settlement for which there is almost universal support. The Arab Arab states, Iran, Hamas, almost anyone I point to, have for years, decades, been in favor of a political settlement on the international border in which unified Gaza and the West Bank have an independent state. Well, the U.S. vetoed a resolution to that effect in January 1976, and I won't go through the record, but it's been pretty much the same since, and they're still opposing it. They talk about settlement expansion is a cover. It's the settlements that are illegal, whether you expand them or not. In fact, Israel recognized that in 1967, and the United States too. Talk about, expanding existing settlements. Yes, you should stop the expansion, but it's a way of distracting attention from the real point. As long as this settlement program is intensified and the siege of Gaza reduces it to a barely survivable prison, a settlement expansion is like a toothpick on a mountain of problems. What has to happen is that the United States has to accept what Britain accepted in the mid-late 90s, that they should deal with the legitimate demands and grievances of the population. And in that case, yes, there might be peace in 2025, probably an uneasy peace. And if there is peace, that should really be only the first stage to moving on to something much more acceptable, should be more acceptable to both of the populations. I mean, anyone who's ever been to that area knows that if you draw a line through Cisjordan, Jordan to the sea, former Palestine, if you draw a line through it almost anywhere, it's too artificial to exist. It's a single unit. And as the cycle of violence declines, there should be moves towards closer integration, commercial, cultural, personal, other connections, and towards a more civilized outcome, rather like here, in different circumstances, but it's not all that different.
Professor Chomsky, once again on behalf of the Free Gaza movement, thank you very much for taking the time to speak with us today. And as a little token of our appreciation, I'd like to present you with a bottle of Irish whiskey, which no doubt I'm sure you'll enjoy.
Okay, I'll take it then.
My uncle, it's a whiskey manufactured by my uncle.
Oh.
And he's a very popular man in our family, so he is.
Very, very terrific. I always look for Irish whiskey. All we can get is Hennessy.
Oh, you'll enjoy that one there now. It's a precious one there.
Okay.
Thank you very, very much.